This is precious. I love this sweet, and I just ate half of it and kept another half because I thought I will never ever have them again. For me, this is a diamond. Reminds me of my childhood and the golden time. I was so excited to discover these films. My family had many photographs, but we lost them when we fled the Afghan wars as refugees. Most Afghans have no pictures of their past, nothing to show their grandchildren. It is a terrible gap in our lives. These films, kept safe for half a century, are the only ones I have ever seen that have survived the wars. They show my Afghanistan, to me, the real one, a land full of life and hope. They tell a special chapter of our story that's almost forgotten. Half a century ago, an American, Glenn R. Foster from California, arrived in southern Afghanistan. He stayed on for 7 years, a keen photographer in black and white and marvelous color. Glenn took his 16mm film camera through Kandahar and Helmand. He toured through villages and deserts. Sometimes he just let the camera run. Foster's family kept the films in a trunk at home, and they kept a reel of tape, noting his impressions as plain as the day he recorded them. Their calm and optimism surprises our 21st century heirs.
Welcome to the Kingdom of Afghanistan. I think the way to really see a country is to learn a little of the language and culture and really get to know the people. It usually turns out that a visitor receives the wrong impressions if he rushes about. Afghanistan will someday be on everyone's tourist list as a must, but the tourist of the future will not be able to see some of these things.
We tracked down Foster's assistant, now living on the far side of the world in America. He hadn't seen the films in 50 years.
او دا زما عکس دی دا زه یم پکښې کې دا زه یم پخپله په دا زینو کې خیږم هغه وخت کې ګلن فاسټر لاندې ولاړو دا عکاسي کول دا زه وختم دا د سربیر زه دلته راغلی یم دا نشته وایم ورته چې د اکبر په وخت کې دا چې زینه جوړه سوې ده او دپاره د مشاهدې لپاره هلته نشته دی خلافت شاه ظل الله جلال الدین اکبر بادشاه غازي نشته کړی دی او دا په فارسي نشته ده او دا زه ورته ترجمه کوم دا ګلن فاسټر په انګریزي ورته وایم چې دا شی نشته سوی دی ولا هر وقت و شه وقتی وی شه زمانه و خصوصا د ګلن فاسټر ډېر یو اخلاقي سړی و د ادب و اخلاق ټوټه و هغه ګرد عمر مهذب خبرې کولې او په لار کې زموږ د خلک پاته سو بعضې وخت ته ومنه د هغه ځای خلک دونه ښه مهمان نوازو د شیدې او غوړي موږ ته زما په یاد دي موږ تلو د کجکي ته یو وخت د ډوډۍ وخت سو څه دا راکول او ډېر مهمان نوازي کول خصوصا زما سره ګلن سره او ښه وخت مې لیدلی دي.
Even though there are masses of people, the country seems able to feed them all. Though their diet may not be abundant, you don't see the hunger that you do in some countries, and beggars are seldom seen. This is due in part by the reclamation projects instituted by the government. Bread sold in a bakery like this is very, very delicious. You may want a little something to go with your bread. Here you can buy a little mutton and be on your way.
The films capture a time when Afghanistan was changing, modernizing, filling with ideas. King Zahir, the last Afghan king, imagined a forward-looking country, united under one flag. All Asia was emerging from the Second World War. The old imperial power, Britain, in retreat. New countries were born. India and Pakistan, Afghanistan's most intimate neighbor. In 1956, Pakistan drew up its first constitution. It declared itself as something completely new, an Islamic republic. Mehtabuddin crossed the border into Pakistan to film the celebrations. The school children are queuing up for an orange as a gift. It was a time of moral ambition, of aspiration for all. Zahir Shah saw his country as at the heart of a modern Asia. Here he is, greeting the visiting president of Turkey, Jalal Bayar, in 1958. Zahir Shah cautiously opened up state and society. He reformed the army. He promoted Afghan National Independence Day, known as the Jashan.
دا زما فلمګیري ده او ما فاستر نه و هلته کابل ته نه دي تللی زه تللی یم او دا ما زما دا فلمګیري ده ما د کیمرا وړې وه یو سړي پروژه به مې ایښې وه دا فلم واخیستل او دغه خاطره مې زما ښه په یاد دی او بعد به زه ولاړم دا فلم مې واخیستی دا ستاسې فلم چې تاسې ګورئ هغه د جشن منطقه کې ته وګوره دا رسم گذشت د مکتوبو رسم گذشت دی هغه سپورټمنان چې تیریږي دا ما اخیستی دی
It's hard to imagine now, but then Kabul had money in the bank, $100 million. Zahir Shah decided to place his investment strategically into the south of Afghanistan, where the river Helmand cuts through an immense desert. Dr. Farooq Azam was advisor in the Afghan Ministry for Power and Energy.
چې وی کتل چې ډیر سوزان او پراخ دښتونه دي او ډیر په مقدار اوبه روانې دي او دواړو خواو ته امکانات د ډیر زراعت شته خو هلته پراخ دښتونه دي څوک ډیر کمه استفاده ځینې کوي نو دا مفکوره را پیدا سوه چې باید د اوبو څخه استفاده وشي.
Zahir Shah hired the best foreign engineers with state-of-the-art equipment from a company called Morrison Knudsen. Everyone called it MK.
نو بیا د موریسن کنوټسن کمپنۍ چې د بویې د ایډاهو یو غټه متنفذه کمپنۍ وه هغه سره قرارداد وکړي چې راسي دا کانال امتداد اوږدیم کې او په عین حال کې د مځکو د تصدیح کار وکړي نو په د اوسنۍ عصري پروژې تاریخچه په حقیقت کې د 1946 د MK د قرارداد څخه سوې ده. نظریه دا پیدا سوه چې باید یو بند جوړ سي د کجکي په منطقه کې سروې وسوه چې دا اوبه ذخیره کړي او دې کانالو په اصطلاح ودې مځکو ته دایمي اوبه ورسیږي. نو د کجکي د بند نظریه اصلا د فلډ کنټرول د سیلابونو د مخنیوي د آبیارۍ او د انرژي د برق د تولید د دې درو دغه دپاره وه.
And that's how our filmmaker Glenn Foster came to be there. He was an engineer with Morrison Knudsen. MK drove roads through the desert and canals through the sand. It built 3 colossal dams at lightning speed. Foster and Mehtabuddin went out to film each stage of the project in detail, from the grand opening of the dams to the narrowest canals spreading across the desert. Not many Americans still remember the old days in Helmand, but there are a very few.
We went to Afghanistan in
Our daughter was about a
I
year
went,
old.
I went ahead of you because we didn't have
The house.
any house for the family for the first 6 months. And we're working on the new Kandahar International Airport. And then Inga came over about 6 months later. We lived in this little bungalow. I think it
It
had,
was a duplex.
was it a duplex?
Yeah, and it had one bedroom, a living room, and a long kitchen with a table at the end with 2 chairs.
Yeah,
That was the
quite small.
that was
yeah.
the dining room.
Well, it had been built in a huge compound that the government of Afghanistan had made available to MK quite a few years earlier when MK went in 1946 and 7 to start the Helmand Valley project. The way these guys are so self-sufficient and so, if you're working here and you have to move a 20-ton generator from here to there, you can't call up Joe Blow at the crane outfit. Tell him to send over the 200-ton crane. But they knew how to do it.
The American technicians didn't come to Afghanistan as single men for just a few weeks as they do now. No, they brought their families, their phonographs. They brought their swimming costumes. Helmand was a fun place to grow up. My neighbors were American. We used to go to their picnic and 4th of July parties. We used to invite them to our Eid celebrations. I went to a co-educational school. My father opened a cinema in Helmand. Everything seemed possible then.
فلم دی هغه موږ کتل دغه زموږ ژوند او ښه ژوند زه خو هېڅ شکایت نه لرم. اکثر فلمونو یو فلم مې په یاد دی زما ډېر خوښ شو هغه فلم صلاح الدین په باره کې و. هغه ما ولیدي او دغه کوبایي فلمونه ډېر راتله. کوبایي فلمونه زما ښه په یاد دي ډېر به و. دا جان وین و دا فرانک سناټرا و دا نومان زما لږ په یاد دي.
I remember Santa Claus arriving on a donkey in Lashkargah and the presents he brought. Really nice color pencils, books, dolls, and sweets. Afghanistan's irrigation projects had many difficulties in the early years. The land flooded, salts rose up through the earth, and the early settlers were herdsmen with not much idea how to farm.
او د افغانستان حکومت یو بله کمزوري او بې تجربهګي هغه دا وه چې پوونده یې وروسته، کوچیان یې وروسته، هغه کسان یې وروسته چې په ټول عمر یې یو یم په لاس کې نه و نیولی. نو افغانستان حکومت دا هم ونه کړه چې هغو ته تربیه ورکړي، د زراعتو کورسونه ورته جوړ کړي، د هغو ته ورزده کړي طریقه د زراعت.
It took a lot more investment and loans, huge loans, to green the desert. Afghanistan's debt grew as the age of independence slipped into the age of international development. The new U.S. government aid agency, USAID, replaced Morrison Knudsen.
لکن دا پروژه بالاخره کامیابه سوه او په 1980 کې دا پروژه ډیره کامیابه وه، چنانچه هغه وخت چې په 1980 کې مسلسل 80 کې وچکالي وه او په افغانستان کې سخت د غنمو د غلې قلت و، دې پروژې ډیر لوی کردار ادا کړي.
The growing of opium poppies that Helmand is famous for now all over the world was virtually unknown.
هغه وخت زما په یاد دي، زه د هلمند شمال ته تللی وم، مرکزي ساحو ته، جنوبي ساحو ته، تقریبا ټول کلي ما کتلي وه. په یوازې په د هلمند په شمالي برخو کې د مساکلا په شمال کې، باغني و باغران کې، چرمستان و هغه ځایو مرکزي افغانستان کې د هلمند څوکې چې موشتې دي، هلته تاریاک کرل کېده چې ډېر کم کره کېده او هغه موږ د هغو څخه ضمانتونه اخیستې وه چې بیا نه کري او په عوض کې مو ځینې خدمتونه مو ورته وعده کړې وه. لکن په نور هلمند کې چې مرکزي هلمند و یا کښته هلمند و، په دې کې ما درته وویل چې خلکو تاریاک نه پیژندل، حتی ګل یې هم نه پیژندی او خلک ډېر آرام ژوند یې درلودی. خلکو پنبه کرل، خلکو غنم کرل، خلکو میوه کول او په عین حال کې سبزیجات و ترکاري یې کول. په دوی ډېر خوشحاله وه.
We Afghans felt safe in those days to go wherever we wanted, even after dark. So did the Americans. We weren't afraid of each other then.
هغه چې درته ووایم چې وایي دروغجن وایي لعنت دې وي، دا یو ښه قصه ده درته وایم. دا زما د انجینري په دفتر کې چې وم، زموږ یو انجینر تللی و سپین بولدک خواته. وخت سپین بولدک ته نږدې دلته موږ ډبري ورته وایو، هغه وخت کې سړک چې جوړېدی اکسیډنټ یې کړی و. اکسیډنټ یې کړی و او د موټر څخه د باندې غورځېدلی و، زخمي و ډېر. نو دا یو څوک راغلی و، کوچی راغلی و، خپل هغه کوسۍ موږ بلل کندهار کې، هغه ګرم کوټ چې نه دی، هغه پر اچولی و، اور یې ورته بل کړی و، هغه وخت کې ژمی و او دی یې پرېښي و. دغه زما ښه په یاد دي، دروغ نه به درته وایم چې دومره صمیمیت درلود افغانان امریکایان سره. دا ګوره هغه امریکایي په لاس کې ساعت و او جیب کې پیسې وې، هېڅ شی ته لاس نه وړی، دا خپل کوسۍ پر اچولی و، اور یې ورته بل کړی و، تللی و.
ښه سو هغوی د دغه پیشرفته زراعت د ټکنالوژي د برکته په ژوند کې ډېر لوی تغییر راغی. هلمند بیا د میوو وطن سو، د پنبو وطن سو، د کښتو کار وطن سو او د هلمند هندوانې میوې او د سبزیجات دا به همجوارو ملکو ته تلې او شاوخوا سیمو څخه به د ټولو ولایاتو څخه به هم د کښت په وخت کې خلک ورته راتله، کارګر ورته راتله، هم د حاصلاتو د اخیستو په وخت کې ورته راتله.
More than 1 million people moved into southern Afghanistan in these boom years, seeking jobs in schools, hospitals, and factories. Glenn Foster had no doubt in the power of technology to bring about profound social change.
Scores of new brick kilns such as this are springing up in every village of the kingdom to supply the materials needed to build the new Afghanistan. The population is exploding out into the open in a vast building program. The spirit of a new era is driving them at a furious pace. And the population, from the very youngest to the oldest, have a job to do.
Kandahar's brand new airport used the latest technology. The outside world was drawing closer. We didn't see our new airport as the product of faraway Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. To us, it was a marvelous new opportunity.
We were building the international airport. The airport included large underground fuel tanks, very high capacity fuel tanks. It included a very sophisticated refueling system, electronically controlled, right out onto the apron. It included overnight facilities for maybe 100 people. Back in the 50s and 60s, when a plane stopped to refuel, everybody got out and stayed overnight wherever you were on the way while the aircraft was serviced, and then the pilots and everybody would get back on. It might be the next morning. And it was designed to use a maximum of local materials, and all construction around Kandahar was all adobe and brick. Mm-hmm. There's no timber, no steel. So the airport was designed as brick and was designed as arches. We had huge, big parabolic arches like this out facing the apron, and then a barrel arch that went behind them to enclose the terminal building. And the Afghans were experts on that kind of construction.
Well, the Russians had built this beautiful airport in Kabul. So USA, so wait a minute, we can't have the Russians building, that's my opinion, building airports up in Kabul. We got to do something too. So they built one in Kandahar with USAID money. Correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
In 1973, King Zahir Shah's cousin Daud Khan overthrew him in a bloodless coup. He declared Afghanistan a republic and himself the first president. Daud Khan rode the tiger of his times, balancing big investments from the Americans against those of the Soviet Union. I was part of that lucky generation, the first who would reap the rewards of all the hard work. We were ambitious girls. We had big ideas, to be lawyers, to be doctors, to transform our country. We could not have known how very quickly the best of times would become the worst. In 1978, a group of Communist Army officers overthrew President Daud Khan, the Sour coup d'etat. It began a generation of war and invasion, the war we are still living with today.
و زه خو ثور انقلاب چې وسو شپږمه ورځ یې زه موقوفه کړم او ویې ویله چې تا غرب کې سبق ویلی دی بیا یې زه بندي کړم په بلوچرخي کې په دغه کې دمزنګ ته بیا بلوچرخي ته اعدام حکم یې راباندې راویستی.
My parents were worried for our future. My sisters and I dressed in old burqas and plastic shoes. We managed to catch a bus across the border into Pakistan as refugees. We took just small bundle of things. Mehtabuddin escaped too. Along the road he had helped to build in the 1940s. In December 1979, Soviet troops entered Kabul. They broke open Pulicharki jail. Dr. Azam escaped like us. He fled the country and spent years abroad as a refugee.
پس ژوند دغسې تیر سو. متاسفانه هغه خدمت چې موږ غوښتی چې دا طلایي دوره د ژوند مو زموږ د تجربو زموږ د علم زموږ د پوهې زموږ د دانش څخه استفاده وسي په دې 15 کاله کې.
The years of war brought the dams, canals, and power lines of southern Afghanistan close to dereliction. Kandahar airport, though, is still largely intact. The Andersons didn't think they would see it again until a different technological innovation made that possible.
I went on the internet here not too long ago to see what I could find out about the international airport in Kandahar. And I found out that the NATO forces were using it, but that also the Afghanistan National Airlines was using it for domestic flights all over Indonesia or all over Afghanistan, and also for some international flights in the area.
I would go back there. Yeah. Yeah. Those were the days. We had a good life. We really did. We had a really good life.
دا کابل دی، کابل سټیډیم دی. دا د جشن وخت دی. هغه ټیمونه چې شرکت کړی دی په د فوټبال کې په دغه کې لوی دا بیسبال دغه دی تمرین دی. دا امریکایان کوي په خپله او دا اکثر ما پیژندي دا خلک هغه زمانې دي. هغه وخت جلا و د خوب خیال پر راځي دا.
گفتی